hey, this is my video showing off my website. So I just kind of want to show the navigation, the features that it has, everything that I can kind of find. I'm not going to be showing off the CSS, but I did want to show off the the product, what you can actually see if you go onto the website. So this should start recording now. Okay, so we should be recording. So looking at this, first of all, the first thing you see is the home screen. Kind of a lot, one of the main things that I did with all my websites was kind of like somewhere where you could land, and it was just really simple. It's literally just a picture, maybe a bit of text, the logo is all very important, and maybe a navigation bar. In this case here, for my quote-unquote main one, I did have a navigation bar. Now, I did make a better version of this one, so I don't want to spend too much time showing this particular one off, but it is important to show it off because this is the one that I actually followed the plan on. However, after following the plan, I thought, okay, maybe it isn't the best one. I could probably do better. Some of the features are like, okay, but could I maximize them? Yes. So I'm gonna do another one. But either way, this is what I followed the plan to make. So again, there's the landing page. Here you have the nav bar. Again, the nav bar, it glows when you hover over it. And you have my logo here, which we'll see whenever you click on the navigation bar. This is a one-page layout, right? Where you don't have to scroll, you don't have to click, and it redirects you to other pages, except for when you go to a particular guide. But so in this case, if you do click on the button, it will just scroll. This is really easy, one line of code. I will be showing it off when I do show off my code. But it's basically you click the button and it scrolls like that, just by itself, really smooth, and I love it. I think it looks great. So anyway, this is kind of like the home page. Here I'd kind of maybe add something on the left side, so it has a 2-column sort of layout. You can also just consider it something that's just a main side, and then you also have the sidebar, I guess. But anyway, on the sidebar, you have a bit of text, 3 little images, and then on the right you have sort of like your main card and the 2 sub cards underneath. Basically, one of the things which I decided it looked really good was when you kind of played around with the cards, right? So you'll see here, if you look closely, you have the background is white. So I'm talking about the main bar here, right? The background is white, but then on top of the background, you have sort of like these gray cards. Now, in general, I felt like this was the easiest way to sort of like separate the sections, but not only that, it looks better. You also see where the text starts, where it ends, what things are grouped together. Like, how do I know this image belongs to this specific title, or does this text here, does it belong to any sort of section? We don't really know. So by adding cards, it's all just grouped together. And some of the things you'll notice as well is that there is a slight box shadow underneath. It's just black shadows. It's like a black box. You decrease the opacity. You can do that with RGBA. And it's like a nice little dark shadow. And I really like this website and some of the other ones that I made particularly because they have like this sort of depth, right? So it's not flat. It's not like, oh, you can't, like you could touch it and it would feel like a paper. Like there's a feeling of depth, right? And in this case, the shadow does a great job of doing that. Also, if you hover over the cards, I added different types of hovers or zooms, whatever you want to call it. This one in particular, the big card, you can see the whole card zooms forward. And then for the little smaller cards, what I did was the individual text zoomed forward. So that's quite neat. One of the problems that I encountered, was that when I tried to make the whole card zoom, if I had 2 cards side by side like this, when one of the cards zoomed, it kind of left the other card with not enough space to fit on the screen. And therefore, whenever you zoom, the other card would sort of like temporarily move below the card that you zoomed on as you were zooming, right? Because there wasn't enough space for it to be there, right? So anyway, that's just that. I wanted to, make a note of that. The other thing which you'll notice, I think this is really, again, it's just something easy to do, but aesthetically, it's a must. Otherwise, the website just looked horrible before. The Z index. Now, basically, you have the X and the Y axis. Everybody knows about that. However, there's also something called the Z axis, which is how far or away a certain element is away from you. And so one of the things which I did immediately was change the z-axis of the navigation bar to 1. So basically what that means is that all times, unless other elements are specified the contrary, I guess, the navigation bar is always going to appear first. Because one of the problems which I encountered as I was coding the website was, especially when you hovered over the boxes and they became bigger, they came in front of the navigation bar, which it looks really bad. I can't exactly explain it, but right now, if I hadn't used the z-index and I also zoom on this big card, you would see that the card would go on top of the navigation bar, would go on top of the text. It looked generally kind of bad. As soon as I stopped hovering, that effect would go away, but it was impractical and it just looked bad. So that's another thing which I added. Another thing which you'll notice is that the website is animated, right? So again, here the logo is animated. And if you scroll down here as well, you see the images as well, the cards. I kind of played around with what you animated. Sometimes the cards are animated, sometimes it's the individual images or individual text. Whatever I found was nice. So we move on to the guides. This is like a general footer. I really wanted to have like just really simple footers, right, where you could sort of separate all the sections. This also brings me to another feature or effect that I added to my website, which is the parallax effect. So you can also see it here in the starting page. I think it's going to be easier to see it. But as you can see, as I'm scrolling down, the background actually does not move, right? So I can scroll down, the background stays the same, right? The desert does not move. You can also add it so it's a less aggressive parallax, so that the background moves. It does move up as you're scrolling, but not so aggressively. It moves considerably slower. And it looks nice, but you do need quite a bit of JavaScript for that, sorry. So I decided, you know what, let's just do this. Again, I'll show off how to do it when I do show off my code. But it's really simple. It's the same thing here that I use with the nav bar. I chose a really simple image for the background of the nav bar. On the left, it has a couple of like diamonds, I guess you could call them. And whereas on the right, it's like bland. So again, really simple with just a bit of text. And I love the way it looks. I think it's great. So anyway, we move down to the guides. Here you can see as well the buttons are animated, but anyway, it's a really simple layout. So here at the top, you can have like the section descriptor, I guess. Basically here, I could put something about like guides, whatnot, and like a subheading here. And a bit of text explaining like, you know, these are the guides. You know, you can find whatever guide you want, and then it'll take you to do this and that. And this is where you actually learn. This is where the content of the page actually lies. I want to come back here in a second and show off the individual guides. But for now, I want to move forward briefly. You can see the buttons animate in, so that's what I was saying before, where I play with different animations. Also, I played around with the hover effect quite a lot. You'll see it especially later as well. Same thing that you see in the nav bar. The color changes. Well, here I did the same thing. It's just, it turns a bit grayer, right? So it's something subtle, but it does look nice, and it really allows you to, as somebody who's viewing the website, this is great because it allows you to know that, okay, this button is clickable. If the button just stayed black, it's like, can I click this? And then you have to actually click it. It's simple, but it's the little details that really add up for me. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that as well. But we scroll down, again, we'll come back to this, the about us section, again, same footers all the time. And then this is something slightly similar. Here you have the let's say three people, right? Here's where I would add 3 pictures of people who made the website. In this case, it could be me, my friend, and another friend, for example, or 3 random people. Regardless, the idea behind this is that you can see sort of who made it, and then you can also contact them here. The buttons again, you have the zoom effect, and then you also have the hover effect where the button turns slightly grayish. And then down here, the idea would be to sort of maybe add the company logo or add sort of like a photo of the of the workplace maybe, and add a bit of text describing the company, whatever. I didn't really want to add this. The content itself, like the text, you can see a lot of it is just placeholder text, right? Lorem ipsum, or any variants of it. Because at the end of the day, I think the important thing right now is just to finish the website and have something that you can see visual. Okay, would this look good, right? So anyway, about a section, really simple. Here, contact us. This would take you to the bottom of the page, which we'll see in a second as well. Going down to reviews, this section I love. You got a little sneak peek there. But I love it because it's different cards, and each card would be like a separate review, right? So you'll see in a second, they all animate in individually, right? It just looks great. And then here you have the final user ratings. But I mean, looking at the cards individually here, like you might have like the name of the review. The subheading here would be I don't know, the person's name, the date that they uploaded it, for example. And then here's where they actually write the review here. And again, it follows a very similar format to some of these other texts. Like for example here, the heading, the subheading, and the text, right? All the same fonts and styles, and that's something which I played around with with the CSS. Sorry, within the CSS. Anyway, again, when I do show the code, you'll see. But anyway, it's all linked together, so that looks great. And then here at the bottom, this is sort of like the review section. This is fairly simple. Here at the top, you have, again, the heading, the subheading here, which I sort of decided this is obviously a made-up number, 4.1 average based on 254 reviews. You have a little divider here, again, which you'll see throughout a lot of this. It isn't necessary, but I did kind of want something which kind of acted as the top or the bottom of the page. In some of my other websites, in fact, the one that we'll look at in a second, we do something similar but slightly different. But anyway, this is quite simple as well. It's kind of like a 3-column layout. You have here the first column where it says 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, etc. And then the second column is the largest column. Obviously, the columns are not equally divided in terms of width. This is where the bars are at. You simply play around with the height, the width, and you set it to float to the left. Again, I'll show off how that works when I do show the CSS and the HTML. You can also hover over the bars. It's quite simple. It grows, so the scale I think changed by 1.10, 1.05, and the color changed to gray. So it's like, it's the little details. And like you're hovering over it, whatnot. Maybe you could click on it in the future and it would take you somewhere. Or anyway, you could play around with that. And then here, obviously, the last column, you have the numbers of how many reviews of that specific star that were left, right? So anyway, quite simple. Again, these figures are made up, but this is sort of so you can see how it would work. There isn't a specific review place where you could leave a review on the website, but I know there's platforms like Google, for example, or other places where you can leave reviews, and maybe this would be linked to the Google. That'd be something for the future. But anyway, contact selection, last section is my favorite section. Again, this is what we would link above in the about this section, right, with the above, with the contact button. But anyway, it takes you here, and I love this because it's like, each little box that you can, choose, it sort of like animates from the left again. Here, this is really simple. Just 4 categories: first name, last name, country, subject. I kind of wanted these bars to do something different. This first one here, you can sort of click, and it has like recommendations, right, based on other things that you've written. Same thing with a name. I ignore the actual recommendations. I don't know why those specifically are there, but oh well. So that's really simple. Again, the bars, they animate when you hover over them, scale. This third one is like a drop-down menu. I think it's just three potential countries that you could choose from: USA, Canada, Australia. It's just so you kind of get the gist of it. But here you can have as many countries as you want, or as many countries as your product is located in, etc., etc. And you choose it, and it obviously changes here. Again, it has the hover feature, so it grows bigger when you're hovering over it. And then this last one here, really simple. You can write anything you want, blah blah blah. No real limits. And yeah, I mean, really simple. I added these 2 like little bars on the right and the left, sort of to bring everything together. Sorry, my dog is barking. But anyway, yeah, just really simple. And it's aesthetically, it just looked good. And yeah, you can play around with this as well. Sorry, I just had to go tell my dog to stop talking. But either way, we'll move on now. Obviously, here you have the bottom footer. You can click on it, it takes you back up. Again, the navigation bar scrolls wherever you click it, right? Different sections. Just overall, little details here and there, and I really like how it looks. Oh, so we have to look at the guides here real quick. Again, here you would change the text and everything, but for example, HTML guides, I only made one example so you could see how it would look. Right, so you would have a bunch of these, right? So it has kind of like a 3-step design, right? So you have the main page, which is the one that we're on right now. Then you would click on one of these, and it would take you to a separate page, and that's where you would have again, a bunch of options, and you click on one of those, it'll take you to the third page, the third layer, and that's where you would actually find the content and the guide itself, right? So it's like a 3-page layout, right? Really like get you. So you start on the main page. Here you can choose what guide you want. You can go back, you can, do whatever you want. And then inside of each individual guide, you have like different sub guides, right? So inside of HTML, obviously HTML is something huge. There's so many things that you could discuss, right? So you click on HTML from the starting page, and that brings you to a session where you can then talk about anything HTML related or anything that we obviously have a guide on. But anyway, you click on it, takes you here again, same loading screen, same place. The subheading here does change to code guides HTML. You have the same navigation bar, and then here you have a bunch of guides. Here I only have 6, but here you can have as many guides as you want realistically. But anyway, let's click on HTML introduction just so you can see sort of how a guide would look. So anyway, I kind of want to play around again with the idea of the cards. Really like the way they look. So here we're just gonna see them. Like, what is HTML? You have for each card you have the heading, and then for some you have like here the one underneath you have like a subheading here where it's kind of like what's gonna appear on this card. Here in this case it would be an example plus an explanation. So here's the example, an image, and underneath an explanation. I don't want to talk too much about this because again I did improve on this website later on, so I do want to show that. But again, each card animates in. Really quite simple here, and yeah, you can obviously click on the button and it takes you back up to the top. You could go back to where you were before. Anyway, I really like the way this looks. I think it's really neat. But I did think I could make it better. So this takes us to our second website, which is the dark version of it. So yeah, obviously the first thing I changed was the cover. I don't understand people who browse on the internet on light mode. I think it just destroys your eyes, quite honestly. So for the second one, I had to make a dark version of it, and I do think it looks quite a lot neater. So I changed the logo here. You can see in the center. The subheading is the same. However, one of the things that you'll see is that I also played around with like a couple of like sub colors, right? So for example, this blue here, it says beginners website created by me. Beginners has like a blue font. If you see anything with a blue font, generally you can hover over it and it'll increase in size. Like here, for example, and it changes to like a pinkish color, right? So those are kind of like the sub colors, right? In fact, in CSS, they're actually known as light blue and light pink. I think they look great. Anyway, you have the same layout though. Again, the background image, which is parallax, and you have the navigation bar here. The navigation bar, I want to play around again with the idea of the transition time, right? So I'll show that off with when I show off my CSS, and also a transition delay for when you leave. So you can see here, if I leave if I stop hovering over the navigation bar, it like takes a bit to go back to where it was originally. But anyway, same idea that you can click and it scrolls down. Or sorry, actually, in fact, never mind, that's my mistake. This one's actually different. I want to have a different layout. It doesn't scroll down. So it's a really simple home page, right? So you can go down, and a new way to code. This is like I wanted this to be really simple, the home page. I don't want to have much content on here, but anyway, you can see again, it plays around with the animation. Oh, the other thing is as well here, when you actually load in for the first time, the navigation bar kind of fades in. So does the logo and the subheading, right? But anyway, going down, you have a new way to code. Again, it's kind of like a slogan, whatever you want to call it. Really simple. I think it looks great. You can continue going down, and then here you can actually find the guides. So one of the things that I thought about the other previous website is that the guides weren't easily accessible enough. Like they didn't have enough emphasis on them is what I'm trying to say. So here, a lot of emphasis on the guides. There's 2 ways to access the guides. Again, you look at the blue text, you hover over it, it's like a little detail, whatever. It doesn't actually do anything. I just think it looks nice. And then here you have the individual guides. I also played again around with the nth child and the transition delay for each nth child. So I'll talk about that when I do show my CSS, but you can see one card comes in, then another, and then another. I think it looks great. And I'll play around as well with a slight background gradients, which you'll see, especially later on in this website. But anyway, hover over the images again. They have the transition, they scale up, and they also have that transition delay. You can click on one of these. I'll show that in a second. But anyway, let's go to the About Us section, because there's nothing else in that main section. Each section has its own part. So About Us, this is really simple. Same layout as before, but I love the way this website looks, right? So I played around with the cards again, but the cards are different because this time the cards, they have a gradient. And I want to have like a little like light color gradient to the bottom, and at the top I wanted to just fade out to black, so it like kind of played around with the background, right? You couldn't tell where the top of the border is, but you can tell where the bottom is, right? And I thought that was really important, especially this little text, right? Like you still want a way to group all the different like content together, but I feel like a box that was like, you know, from top to bottom, really smooth. Just I don't really like the way it looked too much, so I'll play something like this, which is slightly sleeker. Also border radius, just border radius on almost everything, right? The images, the actual cards, here the buttons, and as well you'll see the buttons, they actually animate. This time not only do they change color, in this case it fills in, but it also changes the width to all the available space. I think it looks great. You can click on it and it'll take you to contact us section. I don't want to do it just yet because I do want to go I do want to go in order, but anyway, here same idea, right, with the 3 people and the business, right? And you also have the zooming on hover as well if you want. So moving on to guides. The guides are the same thing, literally the same thing as before, right? You have each individual guide. I just want to offer, I guess, more ways to access the guides and put more emphasis on it. So it's the same thing. These like increase in size, whatnot. We'll come back to this in a second, but you know, same thing. I just want to, guides have as much emphasis. At the end of the day, this is a guides website, right? This is sort of like a tutorial for how to code. So we want as many ways to actually access those guides. Anyway, you move on to reviews again. Same style, but we played around with the cards as well, right? And I think it just looks great. I really like the way this looks. I really do. And the bar still animates and everything. You know, I won't talk about the layout itself because we already talked about that when discussing the other website. But again, the styling did change. I think it looks great. I think it looks so much better, so much easier on the eyes as well with the dark mode. And I'm in love with this website. I really am. I'm really proud. Anyway, contact section. This is really smooth. The one difference as well between this website and the other is that the animations, and again, the scroll animations, which I'll show how I did it when I do show off the code. But the scroll animations, they actually come from the bottom, right? So if you look at my other one, you can see all the elements came in from the left, right? Here, on this new one, the elements come in from the bottom. I think it looks slightly nicer because as you're scrolling down, it sort of appears from the bottom, right? Anyway, I think it looks great. Here, same idea, right? Autofills, you have a couple of options, and here you can write. Here you have a message, send your message. And this ideally would, then transfer it to an actual message on Gmail, and then it would send to your website. I haven't linked this to anything, but ideally it would be linked to something and it would actually send a message. However, that does take a lot more than just CSS and HTML. You need some Java and potentially other coding languages to do that. So that's a lot more complicated. I didn't want to play around with that too much. But anyway, really sleek design. I think it looks great. I just really like the way this website looks. Anyway, we can go back to the guides, look at the guides because I did change that slightly. Same idea, it's a 3-page layout. Here you can see all the guides, right? I put 9 here, but there could be as many as you want, as many as you need. Introduction here, right? Again, when you hover over each little guide, it turns to pink so you can see that you're actually on it. And same idea, the buttons are all the same, the styling is all the same, it's just so everything looks uniform, right? But anyway, here's the same idea, introduction. The other ones I don't have anything on, it's just so you can see how it looked, generally aesthetic. There's obviously a zoom, and then the button, again, same animation. You click on it, and it will take you to the guide. So, again, I think this one looks slightly better. Same idea, obviously, the same cards all around, right? You have the same thing here. I love it because, right, if there's any, elements like this, for example, like inside the bars, I don't know what they're called, actually, but anyway, the HTML elements is the root of an HTML page. You can, hover over it, and there's, a little animation. Again, small details. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't provide much value except for the aesthetics of the website, but I just really like the way it looks. So, and I played around with this letter spacing rather than the scale or the font size. I think that's easier on the eyes as well. Otherwise, as well, if you played around with the scaling here, there's a lot of text above and underneath. So if you were to scale it, the text would sort of move up and down. I didn't want that. I just wanted for it to move across the x-axis, let's just say. But anyway, same idea. The content itself, don't really worry about it too much. Again, here you have the same thing, right, where the letters sort of expand. Anyway, yeah, the content itself, again, it actually is content. This I actually did right, but don't worry too much about it. You have a button here at the bottom to take you back to the menu. Okay, I guess it doesn't take you back to the menu. I don't know why that does that. It should take you back to the menu. Sorry, I must have written the link wrong. But anyway, it would take you back to this general section, right? And then that's generally it. Now, the one thing I do want to show is that I have as well made wait for it to load in, a web templates. And this kind of shows off all the other websites which I made. And, I spent a lot of time making other websites as well, and they also show off a lot of features I couldn't show off in one website. So I decided, might as well add them, might as well link them here. So you have a templates page, and here you have 9 templates. We'll go through them briefly, and sort of effects that they have, what they play around with, right? So anyway, these are all based on things that maybe I enjoy, right? So for example, this one is Jordan shoes. Anyway, this particular website, it's a really simple website, really simple layout, doesn't really have too much to it, but I want to play around with sort of sticking to a particular section, right? So you'll notice it in a second. If you scroll down, it'll like stick, right? So make sure that you have a full page view of the current section that you're on. Anyway, you'll see in a second. This is the landing page again, really simple background. And the logo, you scroll down, boom, it sticks, right? This bar here, it isn't big enough to take up the whole page, so fine, whatever. We'll just center it to the middle of the page. I think it looks great. You can continue scrolling down, boom, scrolls, takes up the full page. Here, there's a button again, scales, and the color changes. You can click on it, actually takes you to StockX, which I think is really neat. You can continue going down, and the button actually follows you briefly. I think that's a nice little touch, right? There's the next section, right? Editor's note, reviews, pros, cons. Here I played around with the table layout, sort of. The content isn't too important. What's important is, the actual features of it, right? So you can see here, boom, it sticks to the top and the bottom, right? And I also played around with the height. The height, I actually use VH, which I'll talk about when I show the code, but that's just basically saying, okay, I want this section to take up 100% of the VH, which is kind of like the vertical height, let's just say, available on the screen. So it's something similar to using the percentage, but you just get something that takes up the whole screen, and it really makes this, I guess, website, the feature pop out. And this is kind of like the thank you slide, I guess. This is the ending. That's all it is, really. Just playing around with that. I think it's really sweet. So we'll go back. This one I played around with the hover animation. Sorry, I actually have 2 of these. This was the first one which I made really simple. You hover, and the circle turns into square, the color darkens, the text appears, and the phone, the subject, moves slightly. This is something quite simple. Okay, quite simple. Actually, never mind. This isn't so simple, is what I should have said. There's a couple of different divs that you want. You also play around with not only the hover animations, but also the before and after elements. I don't know what you call them. I guess the elements, right? So anyway, yeah. It's slightly harder, but again, it's just a really sweet animation. I'll play around with this later on. I'll show you in a second. You have the button. I didn't want to animate too much. It was mostly the animation of hovering over, but it would take you to the website, right? Yeah, I think it looks really sweet, really simple. I made a couple of those, but they just had different colors. But anyway, this is the advanced, the hover animation advanced. This one's actually different. Prime. The drink by KSI and Logan Paul. Anyway, what's important is the animation, which I changed. Here, what you'll see is, again, it's the same idea where the circle turns into a square, but in this case, you have the logo, which disappears, and the actual product appears. Right, so it's a bit different. It looks great. So there's also 2. So if you change, right, there's like a little animation for them to censor each other back. I just think it looks great, right? Again, you can click on the button, it takes you to the web page, right? Really, it takes the concepts that I learned in the previous web page, and it sort of takes them a step further. So I really like the way this looks. And again, I will show the way this looks with the CSS and the HTML later on. But yeah, really, okay, sorry. I keep on saying really simple. This is not really simple. I do want to emphasize that. This is not really simple. This did take a while, but it looks great. It's a really simple animation, let's say, right? Visually, it's simple yet effective. But anyway, that's another one which I made. Next one, scroll animation. This one actually really inspired the specific website, the dark version that I made, and also the previous one. This is where I learned sort of to animate things while scrolling, which is something which, again, I added to the other websites, as you will have seen. It just looks great. I feel like it's not a must, but it brings a lot of life to the website. And again, I forgot to mention this before, but the websites are obviously aimed at students aged 12 to 18, so younger people, and these animations are something like you might consider fun, whatnot. So for people, this is great, right? This makes the website better, right? So anyway, scrolling animation, again, this comes in from the left, right? and you can hover over it, and it's also played a lot with the transition delay, right? So I can actually stop hovering over it and it still stays on that light pink color for a while. Anyway, we can scroll down. It's a really simple website. It doesn't have much to it. But anyway, buy our products again. The blue. That's what inspired the other one. Again, I took a lot of inspiration from this website as I made it back to the dark version I made. Here you have the button. Why is your products? Boom, and then this is literally the same thing. I pretty much almost copy and pasted this back to my other website because I love the way it looks. I think it's just something super simple and it looks great. And on a website like this where it's coding, it's like, wow, it's like, how do I make this, And anyway, this is like Ascent Crew service. This is like professional guidance, money back guarantee, blah, 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 whatever. Again, don't worry about the content. It's really simple, but yeah, it's just a short website, but it plays around with the scroll animation, which again, I would show off when I do show off the CSS and HTML. This one does have a bit of JavaScript. It has like, I think, 4 lines, so not too much. It's really simple. I do understand. I will talk about it when I do show off the CSS and HTML, the actual coding, but it is there. I do think it's important to mention the fact that I didn't make this solely off of CSS and HTML. I don't know if you could. If you can, I assume it would be substantially harder, right? But anyway, this plays around sort of with the idea of the website is always looking forward to seeing if new elements enter the page, right? And then with that, there's 2 sort of identities and elements can have. That's either hidden or show. And so right now, everything underneath, everything that you can't see on the screen is hidden. As soon as it appears on the screen, which is what the JavaScript looks for, it gets added to the show class. Yeah, really simple. Once you actually understand it, but yeah, sweet animation. I love the way it looks. The transition delay here as well on the nth child. Like I said before, oops, sorry, I moved the camera. My bad. But anyway, yeah, I love the way this looks. One of my favorite websites without a doubt, and it inspired the other ones, and you can tell. But anyway, I'll go back. Start animation. This one is potentially the hardest website I think which I made. Anyway, play around with the idea of keyframes. Which I'll talk about later. But anyway, you can click here. Boom! Nice little animation to sort of start. This is based off an album that Drake and 21 partnered on and released not too long ago. I think it was less than a month ago. It was probably like, 2 weeks ago? Anyway, that's besides the point. I think it looks great. Again, you have that really sweet animation. You have 2 main colors, the sort of dark navy blue and the pink, which contrast really well on top of each other. And then you can also go to the next page. The button I didn't want to animate. I wanted this to, after the animation, for it to be like a static page. But anyway, you can click on it and it takes you to the next page and sort of swaps the colors, right? So now the pink is the background instead of the font. And the background is now the font, right? It's the blue. Anyway, really simple animation. Again, you can go back and forth. I think it looks great. I really do like this website. And you can also click View Album. And it takes you to album on Spotify. I really like the way this looks. Again, one of my favorite websites, but it is also one of the hardest ones, right? But anyway, we'll go back. Again, I'll show off how that's done, but it's using the keyframes, the idea of the keyframes, right? In the CSS. So that requires no JavaScript, which is what I like. I try to stick away from JavaScript because it is a whole new world. Obviously, if you do learn it, you have so many more possibilities, but it is quite a lot harder to learn. Especially for beginners. Anyway, this one I want to play around with split parallax. Is really simple. Here you'll notice on the left, this About Me section sticks, right? Here at the top, boom, it sticks, and it's the thing on the right that changes. Really simple. Again, don't worry about the content, personal portfolio, whatever. I just added random images, but sort of that you can see how it work. And the thing on the left sort of stays there. Thank you for watching. Really simple. Plays around with the idea of sort of this like left section sort of being, it's different to the section on the right. It plays around with the idea of flex, but anyway, I'll explain how it works. This one is slightly more complicated. It uses a bit of Java, and actually you need to link it to an external sort of Java file that holds specific functions, right? So yeah, but anyway, really sweet, really simple, and you could add it to any website, and I think it would be like a nice touch. Nothing else really to add on, but I think the parallax effect, again, which I talked about before and I did include on some of my websites, such a really cool, unique effect, and a lot of websites nowadays are using that because it is so good. And again, it adds that idea of three-dimensionality to your website, which is sort of the idea that we played around with the background, with the hover in the background, on background shadow. That's not the word that I wanted to use, but either way, you get what I mean. Really simple website, nothing else to add, but yeah, I really like the way it looks. When you go back, and then here this is really simple. This isn't actually a page. It's sort of like, well, I guess it's like a landing page, right? So you click on it. Basically here, I was scrolling through like a website and I saw this sort of like effect it had, right? And it was sort of like glass, right? So I played around with sort of the idea of this background thing being glass. This isn't the best way to represent it. I have definitely seen better representations of the idea of using glass, but anyway, there's like this little, the container, and basically you play around with the RGBA value and you tone down the opacity. So I'm not sure what the opacity is here, but anyway, you also play around with so it's 2 layers to it. The first layer is the linear gradient. Here you don't really see it as much, but you play around the linear gradient, and inside of the linear gradients, you have 2 values that I use in this case. I think this goes to right to bottom, I'm pretty sure. I might be mistaken, it might go to top left or top right. I'm not entirely sure, but either way, 2 values, and you play around as well with the opacity of each value at the given moment. I'll show how I made that when I do show off the CSS and HTML, but really simple website. Again, you can't actually scroll on it, but yeah, this is something like, in this case, a placeholder link. I could have added it to my other websites for sections that I hadn't finished on, but yeah, anyway, it's a nice idea, playing around with the idea of, using the transparency of an object, right? Anyway, this is sort of like, I guess, we're nearing the end here. This one just takes you back to the other one, in the white version of the website, so I'm not gonna go back into that. And then this one, this is sort of like an Easter bunny, an Easter egg. What is it called? I don't know what it's called. Whatever. Anyway, this is sort of like the first actual website which I made. So this, this really goes back. This is really, really simple. It's about as simple as it gets. But this is where I started, and I really wanted to add this here. This button I completely stole off of W3 Schools, I'll be honest. But this builds on the basics of my future websites. This is where it started, and this is also as well where I learned a lot of the CSS. I always had the idea of making a website that taught you how to code, and this is where I learned a lot of it. So anyway, yeah, I really, it's a throwback, really, I guess you could say. And here I actually had a couple of websites. This is obviously nothing compared to the other Jordan website, which I literally just showed a second ago. But I don't know, man. This goes back. I wanted to make one for the Timberwolves for the City Edition jersey, which they made. I ended up not making it. It's sort of like a project that I lost anyway. I spent quite a lot of time here learning. So everything that you see here, I wrote myself, and I actually understand, which is great. But yeah, this is where I got a lot of the things that I learned, and I think that's pretty much it. So we go back to the dark. This might take a while. There you go. Anyway, this is obviously this is what I would consider the final product. Technically speaking, I guess if anything, I might almost have to say that this is the final product, because this is what the planning led me to make. But I thought, I made it. It looks good. Don't get me wrong. I think I'm quite proud of myself. I'm proud of myself with all the websites that I've made. They were all different steps in learning how to code, but this one in particular, I thought could go a step further, and that's why I made the dark version of it. And this is the one that if I were to release the website, if I were to buy the domain and whatnot, this is the one that you would actually see. Because this one is obviously a lot better than the other one. And it's inspired off of all the other websites. This is the second website I made, after the one that I just showed a second ago. This is the second website I made, right? So, you know, a lot of the features like the animations, like, yeah, sure, it's animated, but these are all things which I added afterwards. I keep on moving my camera. Sorry, I keep on fidgeting with the wire that I have behind it. It's playing around with the camera. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, some of these features I actually added after I made the website, right? So the website was substantially, how can I describe this? It had less to it previously, right? So I added this it was a lot more basic. So I added a lot of this later on, right? So you can definitely tell like some of these, I guess, effects almost feel forced, right? But either way, second website which I made, and I added a couple things to it. So you can tell it's the second website which I made as well, almost. You can almost tell. Okay, so you can't really, it is a good website, but I could take it a step further. So this is the one that I would actually consider the final, the one I'm most proud of myself with, the one that I spent the most time on, I think. Yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Again, I will show off the CSS and HTML either in the presentation, or I might make another video, just because I really do like talking. Once I start talking, I don't stop talking. But yeah, anyway, these are my websites. They're all linked to each other, obviously, here using the templates. Really simple ideas, just, you know, it's basically, I've just used a lot of the time that I had in class, and obviously outside of class, I spent hours working on coding, without a doubt. I don't know how many hours I put in, but it's easily, you know, more than, I don't know, I want to say 100. I actually don't know how many hours 100 might be, if I was actually to code. But it's definitely a lot of hours. You know, I don't let that go unnoticed, I think, because, you know, this has also drained me a lot as well, emotionally and physically. Stayed up late as well, making some of these websites, and I sort of switched from one to the other. Maybe one of the things which I would have liked to do, which I would have liked to have done, which I might do even after this unit, but it's to sort of pick a website and stick to it, you know, and just see where it goes. And what if I was to spend, instead of 100 hours on a bunch of different websites, what if I was to spend 100 hours on just one, right? How good would that one website be? You know what I mean? So, you know, that's another thing. But, you know, as I was learning, right, I didn't want to make it too tedious. I didn't want to spend too much time on one website. I'd much rather spread out the assets, I guess you could say, and, you know, spend more time on different things. And, you know, this was a lot more fun for me, right, than just working on one website, because the progress at the beginning, it's super fast, like, whoa, I'm getting so much done. By the end, when you're adding the small details and, you know, sort of fixing the errors, it can definitely slow down a lot. So I didn't want to make coding something which I didn't like, or I didn't enjoy, or I got bored doing. So making a lot of these other websites, right, again, here, I have so many, because there's so many which I did enjoy doing, without a doubt. You know, you see all these here, and this sort of like the progress and the way that I've learned, and, you know, some of these features I've also implemented onto my other websites. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have. I don't really know what else to say. I feel bad ending the video, but I guess at some point I should end it. But yeah, anyway, that's pretty much it. Yeah, thank you.